Hi everybody, John Carroll here again, superintendent in the Lagunitas and Bolinas-Stinson school districts. And I have one big thought for you to start with, and that's that school is about learning. It's about other things too, but really the reason the whole institution of school exists is to facilitate learning and growth with our students. Let's keep that in mind as we have every single discussion. It's about learning. So when we talk about report cards, the standards-based report card that doesn't have grades on it versus the old-fashioned report card that does have grades on it, let's look at that in terms of learning. What we're really looking at is not changing letters to numbers. We're looking at replacing a rating with feedback. An A, B, C, D, or F with feedback about what the teacher's trying to teach and how close the student has come to learning it. Everybody who's ever learned anything, and that's everybody, knows why feedback is important. And we don't really have to make a good case for why feedback helps kids learn. But let's talk for a minute about rating. We rate a lot of things in the world. Sometimes ratings can be really helpful. Let me give you an example. It's kind of a confession. I love donuts. I've been a donut fanatic, and I would say connoisseur ever since I can remember. I think donuts are great. And this donut right here, I got it at Golden Cream Donut in Santa Fe this morning, and I would give this donut, give it an A-. I've carefully cut into it, taken a few bites. It's an A- donut. But a lot of people go right away to, well, why an A-? Why not an A+? Why not a straight up A? Okay, we know it's good. We know it's a quality donut, but why is it rated down a little bit? The person most interested in that question would be the donut maker. And that question, you'll realize, why was it rated down a little bit, is really asking for feedback. It's not asking for a rating. The rating has been given. Ratings work when you're buying a donut and you don't want to dig into the details of the donut. You know it's an A-, I'll buy that donut. Probably better than the next donut down the road that might have only gotten a B. But if you're the donut maker, the grade means very little except for please give me more feedback, because he's trying to learn. What, he might ask, according to great donut critic John Carroll, would it take to get an A+ on my donut? Well, I could point out a few things. It's a beautiful donut, well made, and I think the thing I look for most is that the texture around the crust, the very thin crust, doesn't bleed any oil into the dough on the inside. It's light and fluffy throughout. If you open it up, you'll see there are no giant air pockets. A little bit of one there, but you got to forgive that in donuts. And the shape, like it wasn't perfectly circular. And I think if I'm going to give an A+ to a donut, it really has to reach that kind of level of perfection. So a rating in the end serves the surface level consumer, somebody who's not an expert in donuts, but who wants to know where they can get a pretty good donut. They can look at the letter grade, they get that donut, they're pretty happy. It does not serve the donut maker who's trying to produce a great donut. Let's remember, your child is a learner. And learners need feedback. When you're looking at your child's standard-based report card, you might be tempted to make the biggest, easiest mistake to make. And that's to think that when on a certain standard your child has what the teacher is calling a 3, that you think that means a B. That's not it at all. In fact, let's make sure we're really clear about that. A 3 does not equal a B. We're replacing the whole conversation. A 3 is not even a 3. It's just shorthand for where to look to read about how well your student is doing on a certain standard that the teacher is trying to communicate. If you're looking at a standards-based report card and you're going to see a number, it could be, it depends on the report card you're using, but you could see a 4 or 5-point scale. Don't think A, B, C, D, F. That's gone. We're not asking that rating question anymore. We're asking the feedback question. Look at the number, say it's a 3. Go find the standard on the report card, usually it's right next to it, and it'll say something like this: consistently demonstrates the ability to use capital letters and punctuation marks. If you read a little further on in the report card, you'll see the same 3 means can add and subtract numbers up to 20. It's not a grade, it's pointing you toward feedback. Has memorized the 5 classical canons of rhetoric and can apply them to making YouTube videos. The standard changes with the report card and it changes with the grade level. The mark is just a way of looking at that. I think you got it now. Now, what kind of feedback does a B give you? Well, I think a B means good. B is good unless you're really thinking you were going to get an A. But it might be really good if you think you were going to get a C. But realize that the B doesn't tell you what the teacher's trying to teach, and it doesn't tell you how close your student came to learning it. Now, another thing you might notice is that a letter grade is not reliable. You could have teacher number 1 who grades on content, attendance, behavior, neatness, participation, and extra credit, and teacher number 2 who grades on content, behavior, effort, socialness. I mentioned socialness because I was once worked with a teacher who graded kids down for being too social. I'm not even sure what that means. And other murky subjective stuff. There's another feature of the A through F rating system that makes grading even less reliable. In a great number of schools, teachers have the autonomy to decide what goes into a grade, and they have the autonomy to decide how important each of those elements are. This does a really huge disservice to a lot of students. Now, it could be that a student gets the content 100%, performs really well on everything else, and deserves an A and understands the content. But this also creates a distinct and very real possibility for two different kinds of students that we don't want to have in our schools. And one is this, the one that is happy but shouldn't be. That's a kid who did really well on everything but didn't quite get the content, but got enough points to get an A. That kid walks out of the class not knowing the basic concepts and goes into a next class unprepared. It also creates the possibility of the kind of student who is sad but shouldn't be, because maybe that student completely mastered the content but didn't get enough other points to show otherwise, and that student gets a D, maybe gets put into a lower class in the future even though he or she is completely competent in the content area. So letter grades are an inefficient way of providing feedback. They're not feedback at all. They're actually simply a rating system, the kind we might use for donuts. The one other thing that's really dangerous about letter grading is it takes kids' minds away from learning the content they're supposed to be learning and gets them to play the game of school, to find out in every single class, at every single grade level, which teacher wants what and how to give them that, rather than focus on the essential standards that the student is supposed to be learning. So standards and feedback for students is really important. When it comes to donuts, I'm fine with ratings. Well, for me, I wouldn't just go with somebody else's rating. I have to taste the donut myself. But we're really in this for the kids, not the donuts. The kid just took my donut. Standards-based report cards will change over time, but they will have much more information, much more feedback than a rating system like A through F. I know there are other issues on people's minds, so if you're concerned about things like sports eligibility or transferability of a non-graded system to high school, all of that stuff is taken care of. I don't want you to worry about that. And you can read more about it at my blog, which is in the description of this video and also is going to be posted right here. Thanks for watching.